Clara's fingers wouldn't stop shaking as she pulled her wedding ring off for the last time. 5 hungry children waited at home. The banker had given her 3 days. 3 days before they'd be thrown into the snow like stray dogs. "That ring won't cover half what you owe Mrs. Whitmore." The voice behind her belonged to her brother-in-law, the man who'd been circling her farm like a vulture since her husband's grave went cold. To see how one stranger's impossible offer changed everything, stay until the very end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The general store in Miller's Creek had never felt so small. Clara May Whitmore stood at the counter, her hand hovering over the worn wood, the gold band catching what little winter light fought through the frost-covered windows. 2 years. She'd worn this ring for 12 years of marriage and 2 years of widowhood. Now, it sat in her palm like a tiny coffin for everything she'd lost. "Mrs. Whitmore," Margaret O'Brien's voice was gentle behind the counter. "You sure about this?" "I'm sure I need flour. I'm sure Tommy's cough is getting worse. I'm sure my children haven't had meat in 3 weeks." Clara's voice cracked on the last word. She pressed her lips together, swallowing the rest. Maggie reached across and closed Clara's fingers back around the ring. "Keep it. I'll put the supplies on your account." "I can't pay my account, Maggie. That's the whole problem." "Then pay me when you can. Spring's coming. Things will turn around." Spring. Clara almost laughed. Spring was 3 months away, and she had 3 days. The door behind her opened, bringing a gust of frozen air and a voice that made her spine go rigid. "Well, well, if it isn't my favorite sister-in-law." Silas Whitmore stepped inside, stamping snow from his boots with deliberate slowness. He was tall and thin with the same gray eyes William had, except William's eyes had been warm. Silas's held nothing but calculation. "Shopping again, Clara? With what money, I wonder?" "That's none of your concern, Silas." "Everything about that farm is my concern. It was Whitmore land before you married into it. Should have stayed Whitmore land after William died." Clara turned to face him fully, keeping her back straight despite the exhaustion pulling at every muscle. "William left the farm to me and the children, legal and proper. You were there when the will was read." "Wills can be contested." Silas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Especially when the widow can't make payments. Heard you're 3 months behind on the bank loan. Heard Mr. Patterson's getting impatient." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. How did he know she'd been so careful, so quiet about the debt? "That's between me and the bank." "Is it?" Silas took a step closer, and Clara forced herself not to retreat. "Because I had a very interesting conversation with Patterson yesterday. Seems he's willing to sell that debt to an interested buyer, someone who might be more flexible about repayment terms." Clara's blood went cold. "You wouldn't." "I would. I will. Unless you come to your senses." He lowered his voice, but Maggie could still hear every word. "Marry me, Clara. Keep the farm in the family proper. Give those children a father figure who can actually provide for them." "I'd rather lose the farm." Would you really?" Silas's smile sharpened. "It's December, Clara. Temperatures dropping every night. Where exactly do you plan to take 5 children when Patterson forecloses the poorhouse? The orphan train?" The mention of her children broke something loose in Clara's chest. "Don't you dare! I'm offering you salvation, and you're too proud to take it." Silas shook his head with mock sympathy. 3 days. That's what Patterson gave you. 3 days to come up with $200, or the farm goes to auction. He leaned closer, his breath fogging between them. "I'll be the only bidder, Clara. And when I own that land, you and those children will have nothing. No home, no protection, nothing." He straightened, adjusting his coat. "Think about my offer. It's the only one you're going to get." The door slammed behind him, and Clara's knees nearly buckled. "That snake," Maggie hissed. "That absolute snake. Clara, honey, don't listen to him. He's right. The words tasted like ash. About the money. About Patterson. About all of it. I've got 3 days and $12 to my name. There must be something. There isn't. Clara pressed her palms against the counter, fighting the urge to collapse. I've sold everything I can sell. The good furniture, William's tools, my mother's silver. There's nothing left except the ring, and you just said that won't cover half. Maggie was quiet for a long moment. Then, what about the children's father, his family back east? Dead. All of them. Cholera 3 years before William and I married. That's why he came west in the first place. And your people? Just me. Been just me since I was 16. Clara finally looked up, and Maggie flinched at what she saw in her eyes. I've survived a lot, Maggie, but I don't know how to survive this. I don't know how to look at my children and tell them. Her voice broke. She couldn't finish. The door opened again, and both women tensed, but it wasn't Silas returning. It was a stranger. He filled the doorway like he'd been built for it. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair dusted with snow and a coat that had seen better days, but was well maintained. His face was weathered by sun and wind, with a scar running along his left jaw. But it was his eyes that caught Clara's attention, green as spring leaves carrying a weight that spoke of hard years. He nodded to both women, polite but reserved, then moved toward the back of the store where the hardware supplies were kept. Don't know him, Maggie murmured. Must be passing through. Clara didn't respond. She was too busy trying to hold herself together, too busy calculating how many hours she had left before everything fell apart. Clara. Maggie's hand covered hers. Go home to your babies. I'll figure something out. There's got to be another way. There isn't. Clara pulled her hand back and tucked the wedding ring into her pocket. Not selling it today felt like a small victory, but small victories wouldn't keep her children warm. Thank you, Maggie, for everything. She was halfway to the door when Maggie called out, At least let me pack you some supplies. Coffee, sugar, some cloth for the little one. Pride told Clara to refuse. Motherhood told her to accept. Motherhood won. While Maggie gathered items, Clara stood near the window watching the street. Snow was falling again, soft and relentless. By tonight, the roads would be impassable. By morning, the temperature would drop to dangerous levels. And in 3 days, none of it would matter, because she and her children would have nowhere to go. Ma'am, she startled. The stranger had approached without her noticing, impressive for a man his size. I apologize. He said, his voice low and careful. Didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I couldn't help overhearing your conversation. Clara's defenses snapped up like a shield. That conversation was private. It was, and I'm sorry for intruding. He held up both hands, palms out, showing he meant no threat. But the man who was just in here, tall, gray eyes, coat with silver buttons, he's your brother-in-law. What's it to you? Nothing yet, but I know his type. The stranger's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Seen too many men like him, circle around like buzzards waiting for folks to get desperate enough to take whatever scraps they offer. Clara said nothing. There was nothing to say. How much? The stranger asked. How much what? The debt. How much do you owe the bank? She should have walked away, should have told him to mind his own business, taken Maggie's supplies, and gone home to her children. But something in his eyes, that same weight, that same weariness, made her answer honestly. $200, due in 3 days. The stranger nodded slowly, processing this information. Then, what if someone paid it? Clara actually laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Mister, if you've got $200 to throw at a stranger's problems, you're either crazy or running some kind of scheme. Neither. Just asking a question. His gaze held hers steady. What if someone paid your debt? What would you do? I'd wonder what they wanted in return. Nobody gives something for nothing. That's fair. He was quiet for a moment, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. What if they didn't want anything? What if they just saw someone in trouble and wanted to help? Then I'd say they were lying, or naive, or both. Something that might have been a smile ghosted across his features. My name's Elijah Callahan. Eli. I've got a spread about 10 miles north of here. Bought it 5 years ago, built it up from nothing. Good for you. Clara's patience was fraying. What's that got to do with me? I'm getting there. Eli shifted his weight and Clara noticed he favored his left leg slightly. Old injury, probably. I need help. Ranch is too big for one man, especially in winter. I need someone to manage the house, cooking, cleaning, keeping things running while I'm working the land. Been looking for someone reliable. So hire someone. I'm trying to. His eyes met hers again, and Clara realized with a start that he was offering her a job. Room and board for you and your children. Fair wages on top of that. And the first thing I'd do is pay off your debt to the bank. The general store went very quiet. Even Maggie had stopped moving behind the counter. You're joking, Clara finally said. I'm not. You don't know me. You don't know anything about me. I know you've got 5 children and a vulture of a brother-in-law trying to take everything you have. I know you were about to sell your wedding ring to buy flour. I know you're scared out of your mind, but you're standing here with your back straight anyway. Eli's voice gentled. That tells me enough. Clara's mind raced, searching for the trap. There was always a trap. Men didn't offer this kind of help without expecting something in return. What do you really want? She demanded. And don't tell me nothing. That's not how the world works. You're right. It's not. Eli was quiet for a long moment. My mother died when I was young. My father was a drunk who took his failures out on her. I watched her suffer for years before she finally gave up. I swore on her grave I'd never stand by while someone else suffered the same way. Never let someone be trapped when I had the power to help. He met her eyes without flinching. That's what I want, Mrs. Whitmore. To keep a promise I made to a dead woman. To be able to sleep at night, knowing I did the right thing when it mattered. Clara wanted to believe him. God, how she wanted to believe him. But 14 years of hard living had taught her that wanting and trusting were two very different things. My children, she said carefully. You said room and board for me and my children. Do you understand what that means? 5 children. 5 mouths to feed, 5 bodies to clothe, 5 sets of noise and chaos and needs. The oldest is 14, the youngest is 4. The boy in the middle is 12 and angry at the whole world. Are you sure you know what you're offering? I understand. Eli's expression didn't waver. I've got a big house, too big for one man rattling around alone. There's room. And if I say no, if I walk out this door and never see you again, then I wish you well and hope you find another way. He paused. But I don't think you will. And I don't think Silas Whitmore is going to give up. He was right. Clara knew he was right. Silas would never stop, not until he had what he wanted. The farm, the control, her. I need to think, she heard herself say. This is too fast. I can't just take the time you need. But Mrs. Whitmore, Eli's voice dropped. You've got 3 days. That's not much time for thinking. He tipped his hat to her and to Maggie, then walked out into the snow, leaving Clara standing in the middle of the store with her heart pounding and her mind spinning. Clara, Maggie's voice was urgent. Clara, honey, I know this seems crazy, but it is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Maybe. Maggie came around the counter, taking Clara's cold hands in her warm ones. But I've been in this town 40 years. I know the look of a man who means what he says, and that man, he meant every word. You don't know that. No, but I know Silas Whitmore, and I know what happens to women who get trapped by men like him. If there's even a chance this Eli Callahan is genuine. Maggie squeezed her hands. "Don't let pride cost you everything, Clara. You've got 5 little ones depending on you." Clara closed her eyes. She saw Josie's face, too old for 14, already carrying burdens no child should bear. She saw Sam angry and scared, pretending to be the man of the house. She saw Annie's smile that had dimmed since her father died. Tommy's thin cheeks from too many missed meals. Little Lily, who'd never even known her father. They were all she had. They were everything. "Where would I find him?" Clara whispered. "This Eli Callahan. If I wanted to talk more, where would I find him?" "I can tell you that," Maggie said quickly. "Callahan Ranch, 10 miles north on the Ridge Road. Big house, red barn. Can't miss it." Clara nodded slowly, her decision not yet made, but no longer impossible. "Pack me those supplies," she said. "I need to get home before the snow gets worse." The ride back to the Whitmore farm took nearly an hour in the thickening snowfall. Clara's horse, an old mare named Bess, knew the way well enough to navigate even when visibility dropped to almost nothing. It gave Clara time to think, too much time maybe. Eli Callahan. A stranger. A man who appeared out of nowhere with an offer that sounded too good to be true. But what was the alternative, Silas? The poorhouse. Watching her children scattered to the winds, sent to work as servants or farmhands for strangers who might treat them kindly or might not. She thought about William. What would he have said? He'd been a practical man, not given to romantic notions about pride or independence. Take care of the children, he'd told her the night before he rode out into the blizzard that killed him. Whatever happens, take care of them. Whatever happens. Whatever it takes. The farm came into view through the snow, the small house, the barn that needed repairs she couldn't afford, the fence line she'd mended herself last spring with bleeding hands and a stubborn refusal to give up. She'd built so much here, lost so much here. Smoke rose from the chimney. Josie would have kept the fire going, would have made sure the little ones were fed and warm. At 14, Josie was more mother than sister to her siblings. Clara hated that her daughter had been forced to grow up so fast, but she couldn't have survived these past 2 years without her. Clara dismounted stiffly, her joints aching from cold, and led Bess to the barn. The door protested loudly as she pushed it open, and inside, the 2 remaining cows looked up with bovine indifference. "Sorry, ladies," Clara murmured, settling Bess in her stall. "No extra feed tonight." She fed and watered the animals as quickly as her frozen fingers would allow, then grabbed the bag of supplies and trudged toward the house. The door flew open before she reached it. "Mama!" Annie barreled into her at full speed, nearly knocking Clara off her feet. Behind her, Tommy followed more cautiously, his face pale and his cough audible even from the doorway. Lily toddled behind them both, her blonde curls escaping from the cap Josie had obviously put on her. "Mama, you're cold," Annie declared. "You're all covered in snow." "I am." Clara scooped Lily up with one arm and wrapped the other around Tommy, pulling him close. "But I'm home now. Let's get inside where it's warm." The house was exactly as she'd expected, modest, worn, but clean and welcoming. Josie stood by the stove, stirring something that smelled like the last of their root vegetable soup. Sam sat at the table, whittling a piece of wood with William's old knife, his expression dark and distant. "Josie, thank you for holding down the fort." Clara set Lily down and hung up her coat. "How is everyone?" "Tommy's cough is worse." Josie's voice was worried. "He was up most of the night. I gave him the last of the honey with hot water, but—" "I'm fine," Tommy protested, which might have been convincing if he hadn't immediately doubled over coughing. Clara crossed to him, pressing her hand to his forehead. Warm. Too warm. The fever she'd been dreading was setting in. "Bed," she said firmly. "Right now. I'll bring you some soup and make up a mustard plaster." "But Mama—" "No arguments, Thomas William Whitmore. Bed." Tommy opened his mouth to protest, caught the look in his mother's eyes, and thought better of it. He shuffled off to the small bedroom he shared with Sam, coughing the whole way. "He needs a doctor," Josie said quietly once he was gone. "Mama, If this is what Papa had before the pneumonia, it's not. Clara made her voice confident, even though she felt anything but. Your father was out in that blizzard for hours. Tommy's been inside warm resting. He'll be fine. Josie didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. Mama. Sam's voice was flat, but Clara knew her son well enough to hear the anger beneath. Uncle Silas stopped by while you were gone. Clara's blood went cold for the second time that day. What did he want? Same thing he always wants. Walked around like he owned the place. Checked the barn, the fences, the house. Sam's jaw tightened. He said we should get used to calling him father. Said things were going to change around here soon. Annie's lower lip trembled. I don't want him to be our father. He's mean. He's not going to be your father. Clara's voice came out sharper than she intended. Nobody's going to be your father except your actual father, and he's... She stopped, breathed, forced herself to calm down. Your father was a good man, she continued more gently. The best man I ever knew. And nobody's going to replace him, especially not Silas Whitmore. Then how are we going to keep the farm? Sam's eyes met hers challenging. I know about the debt, Mama. I'm not stupid. I know we're going to lose everything. The room went silent. Josie stopped stirring. Annie's eyes went wide. Even Lily seemed to sense the tension, her thumb creeping toward her mouth. Clara sank into the nearest chair, suddenly too tired to stand. Yes, she said. We owe money to the bank. A lot of money. And if we can't pay it, we'll lose the farm. I can get a job, Sam said immediately. The Miller Ranch is always looking for hands. I can ride as well as any grown man. I can... No. Clara's voice was firm. You're 12 years old, Samuel. You're not working someone else's ranch. But... I said no. She met his eyes, seeing so much of William in him, the stubbornness, the fierce need to protect his family. I'm your mother. It's my job to take care of this family, not yours. You're a child. You should be going to school, playing with your friends, being young, not working like a grown man. There's no school in winter, Sam muttered. And I don't have any friends. Not since... He stopped, but Clara knew what he wasn't saying. Not since Pa died. Not since they became the poor Whitmores, the struggling Whitmores, the Whitmores everyone pitied, and no one helped. Something happened today, Clara said slowly. In town, I met someone who might be able to help us. 4 pairs of eyes fixed on her instantly. Even Lily looked up from her thumb. Who? Josie asked. Mama, who could possibly help everyone we know, is as poor as we are. A stranger. A rancher from north of here. His name is Eli Callahan. Never heard of him, Sam said suspiciously. Neither had I. But he... Clara struggled to find the right words. He offered me a job, housekeeping at his ranch, room and board for all of us. And he said he'd pay off the debt, the whole thing. Silence. Then, why? Sam's voice was sharp with distrust. Why would a stranger pay off our debt? What does he want? He says he just wants to help, that he saw someone in trouble and wanted to do the right thing. People don't do that. Sam shook his head. Nobody does something for nothing. Papa always said, I know what Papa said. Clara's patience was wearing thin. And maybe this man wants something. Maybe there's a catch I haven't figured out yet. But Sam, what are our other options, Silas? The poorhouse splitting up. The last 2 words hit the room like a physical blow. Annie let out a small whimper. Josie went pale. We can't split up, Josie whispered. Mama, we can't. I don't want us to. But if we lose the farm and we have nowhere to go? Clara spread her hands helplessly. I'm one woman with 5 children. Who's going to take us all in? No one. They'd take Lily. Maybe she's young enough to be raised fresh. They'd send Tommy and Sam to work on farms somewhere. And you girls would end up in service to some family that needs kitchen help or nursemaids. Annie was crying openly now. Lily had picked up on the fear and was wailing. Even Sam's defiant expression had cracked, revealing the scared child underneath. "Is that what you want?" Clara asked quietly. "Because that's what happens if I say no to this stranger's offer. That's what happens if I let pride make this decision instead of common sense." "But Mama," Josie's voice trembled. "What if he's worse than Uncle Silas? What if he's cruel? What if—" "Then we leave. He made that clear. It's a work arrangement, not indenture. I can quit any time I want. We wouldn't be trapped." "You believe that?" Clara thought about Eli Callahan's eyes, about the weight in them, the weariness, the careful way he'd spoken about his mother. About the way he'd given her space, hadn't pressured, hadn't demanded an answer. "I don't know what I believe," she admitted. "But I know I'd rather take a chance on a stranger who might be kind than a certainty on a relative who definitely isn't." The fire crackled in the silence. Outside, the wind had picked up, howling around the corners of the house like a living thing. "When do you have to decide?" Josie asked finally. 3 days. That's when the debt comes due." "Then you should go talk to him again." Josie squared her shoulders, looking far older than 14. "Go to his ranch, see what it's like, talk to him more, then decide." "I can't leave you all alone that long. Not with Tommy sick and Silas." "I can handle Uncle Silas." Sam's chin lifted. "If he comes back, I'll tell him you're not home and he should leave." "Sam." "Mama." Sam's voice was deadly serious. "I'm not a little kid anymore. I can't work a ranch yet, fine. But I can protect my family while you're gone. That's something." Clara looked at her son, her fierce, angry, loyal son, and felt her heart crack a little more. "One day," she said, "I'll leave tomorrow morning, look at the ranch, talk to Mr. Callahan, and be back by nightfall. Can you all manage for one day?" Josie and Sam exchanged glances. "We can manage," Josie said. "Mama." Annie's tear-stained face looked up at her. "If we go to this new ranch, can I bring Biscuit?" Clara thought about the scraggly orange cat that Annie had rescued as a half-starved kitten last spring. The cat that ate scraps they could barely spare. The cat that slept on Annie's pillow every night and was the only thing that made her daughter smile anymore. "Yes, baby, you can bring Biscuit." Annie's face lit up like the sun coming out from behind clouds. It was the first real smile Clara had seen from her in weeks. "Okay," Annie said, as if that settled everything. "Then let's go to the new ranch." Clara pulled her daughter close, breathing in the smell of her hair, feeling the small, warm weight of her against her chest. Maybe this was crazy. Maybe Eli Callahan was exactly what he seemed. Or maybe he was something much worse. Maybe she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, or maybe she was about to save her family. She wouldn't know until she tried. "Tomorrow," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Tomorrow, everything changes." Outside, the storm howled on, burying the world in white, erasing the old paths and covering everything in a blank slate of snow. A new beginning, Clara thought. Or an ending. Only time would tell which. Clara left before dawn, when the sky was still black and the cold bit through every layer she wore. Josie stood in the doorway, Lily on her hip, watching with eyes too old for her young face. "Be careful, Mama." "I will. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me." "What if Uncle Silas comes?" "Tell him I went to town for medicine for Tommy. Tell him nothing else." Clara pulled her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her. "I'll be back before dark. I promise." The ride north was brutal. Snow had fallen throughout the night, and Bess struggled through drifts that reached nearly to her belly. Clara's fingers went numb within the first mile. By the third, she couldn't feel her toes, but she kept going. What choice did she have? The sun rose slowly, a pale disk behind heavy gray clouds offering light but no warmth. Clara followed the ridge road as Maggie had directed, watching for landmarks that were half buried in white. She almost missed this turnoff. Would have if not for the gate. It was a proper gate, well-maintained, with Callahan Ranch carved into the crossbeam. Beyond it, a road had been cleared recently, from the looks of it, leading toward a cluster of buildings in the distance. Clara paused at the gate, her heart hammering. This was it, the moment of truth. She urged Bess forward. The main house emerged from the snow like something out of a dream. It was large, far larger than Clara had expected, built of solid logs with a stone chimney that sent smoke curling into the gray sky. The barn was painted deep red, the color vibrant against the endless white. Outbuildings flanked the main structure, all in good repair, all speaking of someone who took care of what was his. Clara was still staring when the front door opened, and Eli Callahan stepped onto the porch. He looked different today. Less like a stranger, more like a man in his element. He wore a heavy sheepskin coat and well-worn boots, his dark hair uncovered despite the cold. When he saw her, something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or relief. "Mrs. Whitmore." He came down the steps, moving carefully on the icy ground. "You came." "I said I'd think about it. Thinking requires more information." "Fair enough." He reached for Bess's bridle, steadying the horse. "Let's get her warmed up. You too, by the looks of it. You're half frozen." Clara wanted to protest. She wasn't here to accept his hospitality, just to evaluate it. But her body had other ideas. She was so cold, she could barely dismount, and when Eli offered his hand to help her down, she took it without thinking. His grip was strong and steady, warm even through his gloves. "Thank you," she managed through chattering teeth. "Come inside. There's coffee on and the fire's been going since before dawn." She should have looked around first, should have inspected the barn, the outbuildings, the land. But the cold had sapped her resolve, and the promise of warmth was too tempting to refuse. The inside of the house was everything the outside had promised. Clean, well kept, with solid furniture and colorful rugs that softened the wooden floors. Books lined one wall, more books than Clara had seen in years, and the fire in the large stone hearth blazed with welcoming heat. "Sit," Eli said, guiding her toward a chair near the fire. "I'll get that coffee." Clara sank into the chair, too frozen to argue. The warmth was almost painful as it seeped into her bones, making her fingers and toes tingle with returning circulation. Eli returned with 2 cups, pressing one into her hands. The ceramic was hot against her palms, and she wrapped her fingers around it gratefully. "Drink?" he said. "Warm up. Then we'll talk." She took a sip. The coffee was strong and good, better than anything she'd had in months. "You were expecting me." "Hoping." Eli settled into a chair across from her, keeping a respectful distance. "Wasn't sure you'd come, but I wanted to be ready if you did." "Why, you don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Why does it matter to you whether I come or not?" Eli was quiet for a long moment, staring into his own cup. "I told you about my mother. You told me she died, that your father was cruel to her. I didn't tell you the rest." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "The day she died, there was a neighbor, a man who lived on the next farm over. He knew what my father was, everyone knew. But he never did anything about it. Never intervened, never offered help, never even acknowledged what was happening right next door." Clara said nothing. She sensed there was more. "After my mother's funeral, that neighbor came to pay his respects. Shook my father's hand. Told him what a tragedy it was losing such a fine woman." Eli's jaw tightened. "I was 10 years old, and I knew that man could have helped, could have offered my mother shelter or spoken to the sheriff or done 100 different things. But he chose to look away because getting involved was inconvenient." "That's the way of the world." Clara's voice was soft. "People don't like to interfere in other folks' business." "I know. And I spent a long time being just like that neighbor, keeping my head down, minding my own affairs, building my ranch, living my life pretending I didn't see the suffering around me." Eli's hands tightened on his cup. "But yesterday in that store I saw you. I saw the look on your face when that man Silas was talking to you. I saw the fear, the exhaustion, the desperate determination to hold it together even while everything was falling apart. You saw all that in a few minutes. I've been looking at that face in the mirror for 20 years, Mrs. Whitmore. I recognized it instantly. The words hung in the air between them. Clara felt something shift in her chest, not trust exactly, but something adjacent to it. Understanding maybe. Recognition. My children, she said slowly, I need you to understand what you'd be taking on. It's not just me. It's 5 children, all with different needs, different fears, different ways of being difficult. Tommy, my youngest boy, he's sick right now. Could be just a winter cold, or could be something worse. Sam, my oldest boy, is angry at the whole world. He thinks he should be the man of the house, and he resents anyone who threatens that. Josie's practically an adult at 14, but she's still a child who needs to be allowed to be young. Annie's the dreamer, lives half in her imagination, cries at everything, loves too hard. And Lily's 4. She doesn't remember her father, doesn't understand why everything keeps changing, just wants to be held and told things will be okay. She took a breath. That's what you'd be getting. Noise, chaos, need, endless, exhausting need. Are you sure you want that? Eli was quiet, considering. No, he said finally. I'm not sure. I've never been around children much. Don't know the first thing about raising them. Probably going to make 100 mistakes. Then why offer? Because 100 mistakes made while trying is better than walking away and doing nothing. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm not going to pretend I'm some kind of saint, Mrs. Whitmore. I'm offering you this arrangement because I need help too. This house is too big for one man. Too quiet. Too empty. I've got enough money to pay your debt and enough room to house your family. What I don't have is any idea how to make a place feel like a home. Maybe you can teach me that. And if I can't, if we try this and it doesn't work, then we part ways, and you take whatever wages you've earned and you find somewhere else. No hard feelings, no obligations, no strings attached. Clara stared at him, searching for the lie, looking for the catch, the hidden agenda, the inevitable cruelty. She found nothing but a man who seemed exactly as tired and lonely and hopeful as she felt. I want to see the rest of the house, she said. The room where my children would sleep. The kitchen where I'd work. All of it. Of course. Eli stood, extending his hand to help her up. Take all the time you need. The tour took nearly an hour. Eli showed her everything: the large kitchen with its modern stove and well-stocked pantry, the spacious common room where the family could gather, the private bedrooms that branched off a central hallway. There was a room with 2 beds that could accommodate Josie and Annie, another that could hold Sam and Tommy, a small nursery-like space perfect for Lily. And, at the far end of the hall, a room that would be Clara's own. Private? Eli said, gesturing to the sturdy lock on the door. Key's yours. Nobody comes in unless you invite them. Clara touched the lock, feeling its weight. Such a small thing. Such an enormous thing. My room's on the other side of the house, Eli continued. Past the study. You'd have this whole wing to yourself, you and the children. Why? The question came out before she could stop it. Why would you give us so much space? Why would you put yourself so far away? Because I want you to feel safe. Eli's voice was matter of fact. You've been living with a man who makes you feel threatened, your brother-in-law. The last thing you need is another man hovering over you, making you feel trapped. This way you've got distance, privacy, control. You've thought about this. I've been thinking about it since yesterday. Couldn't sleep for thinking about it. He met her eyes. I know how this looks, Mrs. Whitmore. Strange man, isolated ranch, vulnerable woman. I know every reason you have to be afraid. I'm trying to give you reasons not to be. They stood in the hallway, the silence stretching between them. Somewhere in the house a clock ticked. Outside the wind howled. The children, Clara said slowly. They'd have questions. They'd want to know why we moved, why we're living with a stranger, what happened to the farm. Tell them whatever you think is best. I won't contradict you. And Silas. He won't take this lying down. Once he finds out someone else paid the debt, he'll cause trouble. He's connected, knows people at the bank, people in town. He could make things difficult. Let him try. Something hard entered Eli's eyes. I've dealt with difficult men before. I'm not afraid of your brother-in-law. You should be. He's not just greedy, he's vindictive. If he can't have what he wants, he'd rather destroy it than let someone else have it. Then we'll be careful. Eli's jaw set. But I'm not backing down because some small-minded man might throw a tantrum. Are you? Clara thought about Josie's face this morning. About Sam's desperate need to protect his family. About Annie's tears and Tommy's cough and Lily's confused, hopeful eyes. No, she said quietly. I'm not backing down. Then we have an agreement. She took a deep breath. This was the moment. The point of no return. We have an agreement. But I have conditions. Name them. First, my children come first, always. If there's ever a conflict between what you need and what they need, they win. No exceptions. Agreed. Second, I work for you. I'm not your property. I'm not your dependent. And I'm definitely not your wife. We keep clear boundaries. Professional. Something flickered across Eli's face. Disappointment, acceptance, but he nodded. Agreed. Third, if at any point I feel unsafe or my children are threatened, or you turn out to be different from what you seem, I leave. Immediately. No arguments, no negotiations, no attempts to stop me. Agreed. Fourth, you pay off the debt directly. I don't want money changing hands between us. Go to the bank yourself. Pay Patterson directly, get a receipt showing the debt is cleared. I want proof that it's done. I can do that today. Bank opens at 9. Clara studied him for a long moment. You're agreeing to everything very easily. Because your conditions are reasonable. They're exactly what anyone in your position should ask for. Eli tilted his head. Were you hoping I'd argue, that I'd reveal some hidden agenda? I was expecting it. That's how these things usually go. Maybe with other men, not with me. They stood there, two people on the edge of something neither of them fully understood. The fire crackled in the other room. The wind continued its assault on the windows. I need to get back to my children, Clara said finally. Tommy's sick. I shouldn't be away too long. I'll ride with you. That's not necessary. It's necessary to me. Eli's voice was firm. The roads are dangerous. Storm could pick up again any minute. And I'd like to meet your children before we uproot their whole lives. They should know who they're moving in with. Clara wanted to argue, but couldn't find a good reason. Fine, but you follow my lead. If any of them are scared or hostile, you back off. Understood? Understood. They prepared to leave, bundling up against the cold, checking that the horses were ready for the journey. As Eli led his mount, a large gray gelding, from the barn, Clara found herself studying him with new eyes. He moved like a man accustomed to hard work. No wasted motion, no awkwardness. His hands were gentle, with the horse murmuring words she couldn't hear, patting the animal's neck with easy affection. What's his name? She asked. Your horse. Solomon. Had him since he was a colt. He's getting on in years now, but he's still the steadiest mount I've ever had. Bess is the same for me. My husband bought her the year we got married. She's carried me through everything since. They rode in silence for a while, side by side, when the road allowed single file. When snowdrifts forced them into a narrow path. The world was white and gray, and silent, muffled by snow that continued to fall in lazy spirals. Tell me about your husband, Eli said eventually, if you don't mind. Clara considered the question. William was a good man, steady, reliable, not exciting or romantic, but solid. The kind of man who did what he said he'd do and never complained about it. How'd he die? Blizzard 2 years ago, almost to the day. Some of the cattle got loose and he went after them. The storm was worse than anyone expected. He got turned around, couldn't find his way home. Clara's voice remained even practiced. She'd told this story too many times for it to hurt the way it used to. They found him 3 days later frozen. Still had the lead rope in his hand. He'd found the cattle, but... I'm sorry. Don't be. He died doing what he thought was right, protecting what was his. That's who he was. Clara stared ahead at the white road. The worst part isn't that he died. The worst part is that the cattle got loose because the fence was rotten and we couldn't afford to fix it. He died because we were too poor to replace some wooden posts. Eli was quiet for a long moment. That's not why he died. He died because a storm came, and he made a choice. Don't put that guilt on yourself. Guilt's a hard thing to shake. Believe me, I know. Something in his voice made Clara look at him more closely. The war? Eli's jaw tightened. Among other things. You don't have to talk about it. Maybe someday. He glanced at her briefly. For now, let's just focus on getting you and your children settled. One crisis at a time. The Whitmore farm came into view as the sun reached its weak midday peak. Smoke still rose from the chimney, and Clara felt relief flood through her. They were still there, still safe. But as they drew closer, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Another horse was tied to the fence post. A horse she recognized. Silas, she breathed. Eli's expression hardened. Stay here. Like hell I will. Clara urged Bess forward, her heart pounding. Those are my children in there. They reached the house together, dismounting quickly. Clara was up the porch steps before Eli had finished tying Solomon, and she threw open the door without bothering to knock. The scene inside made her stomach drop. Silas stood in the center of the room, his back to the fire, his coat still on. Josie stood between him and the younger children, her face pale but determined. Sam flanked his sister, his hand on the knife at his belt. Annie clutched Lily behind them, tears streaming down her face. And Tommy. Where was Tommy? There she is. Silas's voice was smug. The prodigal mother returns. I was just explaining to your children that things are about to change around here. Get out! Clara's voice shook with rage. Get out of my house right now. Your house! Silas laughed. For how much longer? 2 days less, face facts. Clara, this property is as good as mine. I'm just getting an early start on the transition. The children told you to leave. Sam's voice was tight. They told you Mama wasn't here and you should go. And I told them that I'd wait. Silas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Family takes care of family, doesn't it? I was worried about my nieces and nephews all alone out here in the storm. Tommy? Clara's voice came out strangled. Where's Tommy? In bed. Josie's voice was strained. I wouldn't let Uncle Silas go back there. He was too sick for visitors. Visitors? Silas scoffed. I'm not a visitor. I'm family. You're leaving. A new voice cut through the tension, deep, steady, and absolutely cold. Eli stepped into the doorway behind Clara, his presence filling the frame. His hand rested casually at his side, but there was nothing casual about his posture. He looked like a man ready for violence and entirely unafraid of it. Silas's eyes narrowed. And who the hell are you? Name's Eli Callahan. I'm the man who just paid off Mrs. Whitmore's debt to the bank. The words landed like a thunderclap. Silas's face went pale, then red, cycling through shock and rage in rapid succession. You're lying. Am I? Eli's voice was dangerously soft. Ride into town and check with Patterson if you don't believe me. He's got a receipt with my name on it, every penny paid in full. That's not possible. That debt was supposed to be mine. I had an arrangement. Arrangements change. Eli took a step forward, and Silas took an involuntary step back. What doesn't change is this. You're trespassing on private property. Mrs. Whitmore asked you to leave. I'm asking you to leave. If you don't start moving in the next 30 seconds, I'll remove you myself. You can't threaten me. I'm a respected member of this community. I have connections. I'm sure you do, but none of those connections are here right now. Are they? Eli's eyes never wavered from Silas's face. It's just you and me, and a woman you've been terrorizing. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out that door. You're going to get on your horse, and you're going to ride away and never come back to this property again. This isn't over. Maybe not, but today is. Eli's voice dropped even lower. 20 seconds, Whitmore. For a long moment, Silas stood, frozen hatred burning in his eyes. Then slowly he began to move toward the door. You've made a mistake, he said to Clara as he passed her. Both of you have. This stranger won't save you. Nobody saves anybody in this world. Sooner or later you'll learn that. 15 seconds, Eli said. Silas left, slamming the door behind him. Through the window, Clara watched him mount his horse and ride away, his back rigid with fury. Only when he was out of sight did she let herself breathe. Mama? Annie's small voice broke the silence. Mama, is the bad man gone? Clara turned to her children, her brave, terrified children, who had stood their ground against a man 3 times their size, and felt her heart crack open. He's gone, baby. He's gone. She crossed the room and gathered them all close, Josie and Sam and Annie and Lily, holding them tight, feeling their bodies tremble against hers. They'd been so scared, so alone, and she hadn't been here to protect them. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry I wasn't here. We handled it, Sam said, his voice still rough with defiance. We didn't let him near Tommy. You did good, all of you. Clara pulled back, looking at each of them in turn. I'm so proud of you. Mama. Josie's voice was hesitant. She was looking past Clara toward where Eli still stood by the door. Who is that man? What did he mean about paying the debt? Clara took a deep breath. This was the moment she'd been dreading. The explanation. The uncertain future. The leap of faith. This is Mr. Eli Callahan. He's the man I told you about last night. The one who offered to help us. She paused, feeling the weight of 4 pairs of eyes. 5. She corrected, thinking of Tommy in the back room. He's paid off what we owe the bank. The farm is safe now. But... Sam's eyes narrowed. What does he want in return? He's offered me a job. Housekeeping at his ranch north of here. Room and board for all of us. You mean we'd leave? Annie's voice wobbled. Leave our house? We'd be going somewhere safe. Somewhere Silas can't bother us anymore. Somewhere with enough food and warmth, and this is our home. Sam's voice was sharp. Papa built this house. He's buried in the back field. We can't just leave him. Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. She'd expected this argument from Sam, had been dreading it. But before she could respond, Eli spoke. Son, I know this is hard. His voice was gentle, nothing like the cold steel he'd used with Silas. I know you want to stay where your father's memory lives, but memories don't need a specific piece of land to survive. They live in you, in your family. They go where you go. You don't know anything about my father. You're right, I don't. Eli didn't flinch from Sam's hostility. But I know what it's like to lose someone. And I know that holding on to a place because of grief isn't the same as honoring them. You honor your father by taking care of your mother and your sisters and your brother. By surviving, by living. Sam's jaw worked. His hands were clenched at his sides. For a moment, Clara thought he might lash out, might say something unforgivable, might make this whole fragile arrangement collapse. Then Josie touched his arm. Sam, he's not trying to replace Papa. Nobody could ever replace Papa. Her voice was soft, reasonable. But Mama's right. We can't stay here. Not with Uncle Silas the way he is. Not with Tommy sick and no money for a doctor. We have to go somewhere. Why should we trust him? Sam gestured at Eli. We don't know him. He's a stranger. Yes. Josie looked at Eli with eyes far too old for 14. But Uncle Silas isn't a stranger, and look what he tried to do today. Maybe sometimes strangers are safer than family. The words hung in the air. Clara watched her oldest son struggle, watched the fight drain out of him inch by inch. I want to see him, Sam said finally. The ranch, the house. I want to see where you're asking us to live. That's fair? Eli nodded. Soon as your brother's well enough to travel, I'll bring you all up myself, show you everything, answer any questions you have. And if you decide you don't like it, any of you will figure out something else. You promise? Annie's voice was small, but hopeful. Eli crouched down to her level, meeting her eyes directly. I promise. Cross my heart. Annie studied him for a long moment. Then, apparently satisfied with whatever she saw, she nodded solemnly. Okay. I believe you. Annie, Sam started. She's a good judge of character. Clara interrupted, pulling her daughter close. Better than most adults I know. From the back room, a coughing fit broke the tension. Clara's heart lurched. Tommy. She started toward the bedroom, but Eli held up a hand. I'll step outside, give you privacy with your boy. You don't have to leave. I think I do. He met her eyes briefly. This is a family moment. I'm not family yet. Yet. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Eli touched his hat, a gesture of respect, and stepped out into the cold. Through the window, Clara watched him move toward the horses, giving them attention, keeping himself occupied. Then she turned and went to her son. Tommy lay in the narrow bed he shared with Sam, his face flushed with fever, his breath coming in shallow, rattling gasps. He looked so small, so fragile, so much like William had looked in those final weeks before the pneumonia took him. Mama. His voice was thin, reedy. Mama, I heard yelling. Is Uncle Silas gone? He's gone, sweetheart. He won't bother us anymore. I wanted to help, wanted to stand with Sam and Josie, but I couldn't get up. My legs were too tired. You needed to rest. That's exactly what you should have been doing. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, pressing her hand to his forehead. Still too warm, still too weak. How do you feel? Tired. Everything hurts. Tommy's eyes searched her face. Am I gonna die like Papa? The question hit Clara like a physical blow. She forced her voice to stay steady, forced the terror down where Tommy couldn't see it. No, baby. You're not going to die. You've got a cold, that's all. We're going to get you medicine and rest and good food, and you're going to be just fine. Promise? I promise. She stroked his hair back from his damp forehead. Now close your eyes. Try to sleep. When you wake up, things are going to be different. Better. Tommy's eyes fluttered closed. Within moments, his breathing had evened out into something approaching sleep. Clara sat with him for a long time, watching the rise and fall of his chest, counting each breath like a prayer. He was so young, so innocent. He'd already lost so much. She couldn't lose him too. She wouldn't survive it. When she finally emerged from the bedroom, she found her other children gathered around the table, speaking in hushed voices. Eli was still outside, visible through the window, standing with his back to the house. I'm going to do it, Clara announced. We're going to accept Mr. Callahan's offer. We'll pack what we can carry, leave the rest for now, and move to the new ranch as soon as Tommy's strong enough to travel. What about the farm? Josie asked. We'll figure that out later. Maybe sell it. Maybe rent it out. But for now, staying here isn't safe. Not with Silas circling. He'll try something else. Sam's voice was grim. He won't just give up. Probably not. But at least at Callahan's ranch we'll have walls and distance and someone else to help watch for trouble. Clara looked at each of her children in turn. I know this is scary. I know everything's changing. But I need you to trust me. Can you do that? One by one they nodded. Josie first, then Annie, then after a long pause, Sam. Even Lily nodded, though Clara suspected she didn't fully understand what she was agreeing to. Okay then. Clara straightened her shoulders. Josie, start gathering clothes and personal items. Sam, check the barn and see what supplies we can bring. Annie, you're in charge of Lily and Biscuit. I'll talk to Mr. Callahan about when we can travel. The children scattered to their tasks and Clara went to the door. Eli turned as she stepped onto the porch, his expression questioning. We're coming, Clara said. All of us, as soon as Tommy can handle the journey. How long will that be? I don't know. A few days maybe. A week at most. She wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. He needs medicine. Real medicine, not just honey and rest. If there's a doctor in town... Doc Sullivan. He's good. I can send for him today. Have him come out to look at your boy. That would... Clara's voice caught. That would be very helpful. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Eli moved closer but stopped just short of the porch steps, maintaining distance. We've got a long road ahead. A lot could go wrong. I know. Clara met his eyes. But for the first time in 2 years, I feel like something might go right. That's more hope than I've had in a very long time. Eli nodded slowly. Then let's not waste it. He tipped his hat, mounted Solomon, and rode toward town to fetch the doctor. Clara watched him go until he was just a dark speck against the endless white. Then she turned and went inside, where her children were busy preparing for a future none of them could quite imagine. Change was coming. Whether it would save them or destroy them, only time would tell. Doc Sullivan arrived before sunset, his medical bag clutched tight against the wind. He was an older man with kind eyes and steady hands, and Clara liked him immediately. More importantly, Tommy seemed to relax when the doctor spoke to him, and that alone was worth everything. It's bronchitis, Doc Sullivan announced after his examination. Bad but not pneumonia. Not yet. With proper care and medicine, he should pull through just fine. Clara's knees nearly buckled with relief. What does he need? Rest, warmth, plenty of fluids. I'm leaving you laudanum for the cough and a mustard plaster recipe that'll help clear his chest. The doctor scribbled on a small notepad. Keep him in bed for at least a week. No cold air, no exertion. A week? Clara calculated quickly. A week before Tommy could travel. A week of being vulnerable here with Silas, knowing exactly where to find them. I know what you're thinking. Doc Sullivan's voice dropped low, meant only for her ears. Eli told me about your situation, about Whitmore. Did he? He did. And I'm telling you, as someone who's known Eli Callahan for 15 years, you're making the right choice. That man's got more integrity in his little finger than most folks have in their whole bodies. You've known him that long? Knew him during the war. He saved my life at Antietam. The doctor's eyes went distant for a moment. Carried me 3 miles through enemy territory with a bullet in his own leg. Never complained, never slowed down. That's the kind of man Eli is. Clara absorbed this information, adding it to the growing picture of the stranger who'd upended her life. Why didn't he ever marry a man like that with a ranch and money and... That's his story to tell, not mine. Doc Sullivan picked up his bag. But I'll say this, he's been alone a long time. Too long, probably. Whatever you and those children of yours bring into his life, I reckon it'll be good for him. After the doctor left, Clara sat with Tommy until he fell asleep. The medicine had eased his cough, and his breathing came easier now. Less like every inhale was a struggle. She watched his face in the lamplight, so young, so vulnerable, and felt something shift in her chest. They were going to survive this. All of them, together. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and anxiety. Clara packed what she could, sorted what had to be left behind, and tried to keep her children's spirits up, while watching the road for any sign of Silas's return. He didn't come. That worried her more than if he had. Eli came every day. He brought supplies, food, medicine, warm clothes that looked suspiciously new. He helped Sam with chores, accepting the boys' hostility with quiet patience. He read stories to Lily when Annie was busy. He sat with Josie and answered her endless questions about the ranch, about the work, about what their lives would look like. "You're good with them," Clara said, on the third evening after the children had gone to bed. They stood on the porch, breath fogging in the frozen air, watching stars appear one by one. "I don't know about good." Eli's voice was thoughtful. "Just trying not to make things worse." "Sam's coming around. He asked me today if you had horses at the ranch that he could learn to train." "Did he now?" Something that might have been pleasure flickered across Eli's face. "I've got a young mare that could use a patient hand. Might be she and Sam could help each other." "You don't have to do that. Buy his affection, I mean." "I'm not trying to buy anything, just offering opportunities." Eli turned to face her. "Your boy's angry. He's got every right to be. But anger needs somewhere to go, and working with horses is a good outlet. Better than fighting anyway." "You sound like you speak from experience." "I do." He was quiet for a moment. "After my mother died, I was so angry I thought I'd explode with it. Picked fights, broke things, made myself a nuisance to anyone who'd tolerate me. It was horses that saved me, gave me something to focus on besides the rage." "What happened to the anger?" "It's still there, probably always will be, but it's smaller now, quieter. It doesn't run my life anymore." His eyes met hers in the darkness. "I hope the same for Sam someday." Clara felt her throat tighten. This man, this stranger who owed her nothing, understood her son better than she'd realized. Understood the fury that masked the fear, the defiance that covered the grief. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing him, for not giving up." "Wouldn't dream of it." On the fourth day, Tommy was strong enough to sit up. On the fifth, he was asking for real food instead of broth. By the sixth day, Doc Sullivan declared him fit to travel, carefully, slowly, but travel nonetheless. "We leave tomorrow," Clara told her children that night. "First light. Everyone needs to have their things ready and be prepared for a long, cold ride." "I don't want to go." Annie's voice was small, her eyes fixed on the worn floorboards. "I'm scared." "I know, baby. I'm scared too." "You are?" Annie looked up, surprised. "Of course I am. This is a big change. We're leaving everything familiar behind." Clara knelt down to her daughter's level. "But sometimes being brave means doing scary things anyway. Can you be brave for me?" Annie considered this. "Will Biscuit be brave too?" "I'm sure he will. You can be brave together." "Okay." Annie nodded solemnly. "I'll try." Sam said nothing, but Clara caught him later sitting on his bed in the darkness holding his father's knife. The blade caught the moonlight, glinting silver and cold. "Your father gave you that," she said softly, settling beside him. "The day before he died." Sam's voice was rough. "He said I was old enough to carry it, said it made me the man of the house if anything happened to him. And you've been trying to be that ever since. Someone has to protect this family." Sam looked up at her, and she saw the exhausted child beneath the angry facade. "But I can't, Mama. I'm 12. I'm not big enough or strong enough, or I couldn't even stop Uncle Silas from coming inside. Couldn't keep him away from the others." "Sam." Clara pulled him close, feeling his rigid shoulders slowly relax against her. "You're not supposed to carry this weight alone. No 12-year-old should have to be the man of the house. That's too much to ask of anyone." "But Papa said—" "Papa would never have wanted you to sacrifice your childhood for us. He wanted you to grow up safe and happy and free. That's what he died protecting, your chance to be young." She stroked his hair the way she used to when he was small. "Let me be the adult, Sam. Let me carry the burdens. You just focus on being a kid for a while." I don't know how anymore. Then you'll learn. We'll learn together. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice so small it barely reached her ears, "Do you think Papa would be disappointed in me for not being able to keep the farm?" "Oh, sweetheart, no." Clara felt tears burning. "Papa would be so proud of you. The way you've stood up for your sisters, the way you've worked to help provide. He would be prouder of you than of anything else in the world. Even though we're leaving isn't failure. Leaving is survival. And surviving, that's what Papa wanted most. For all of us to survive." Sam leaned into her, and for a moment he was her little boy again, the one who used to run to her with scraped knees and bad dreams, the one who believed she could fix anything. "Okay, Mama," he whispered. "I'll try." Dawn came gray and cold, the sky heavy with clouds that threatened more snow. Clara had everyone up and dressed before the sun crested the horizon, their meager possessions loaded into the wagon Eli had brought the night before. Tommy sat bundled in the wagon bed, surrounded by quilts and supported by Josie. Annie clutched Biscuit in her arms, the orange cat surprisingly calm. Sam rode Bess beside the wagon, his jaw set with determination. And Lily sat on Clara's lap at the front, her small body warm against Clara's chest. Eli rode ahead on Solomon breaking trail through the fresh snow. He'd said little that morning, but his presence was steady reassuring, a fixed point in the chaos of uprooting a family. They'd been traveling for nearly 2 hours when Sam suddenly pulled Bess to a halt. "Someone's following us." Clara's blood went cold. She twisted to look behind them, scanning the white landscape. At first she saw nothing, then movement. A dark figure on horseback, maybe half a mile back, keeping pace with their slow progress. Eli had noticed too. He doubled back, his expression grim. "Whitmore?" Clara asked. "Can't tell from here. Could be anyone." But the set of Eli's shoulders said he didn't believe that. "Keep moving. Stay together. I'll handle this." "Eli." "I mean it, Clara. Keep the children moving. No matter what happens, don't stop." He wheeled Solomon around and rode back toward the pursuing figure. Clara's heart hammered as she urged the wagon horses forward. In the back, Josie had wrapped her arms around Tommy, her face pale. Annie was crying silently, tears freezing on her cheeks. Even Sam looked scared, his hand on his father's knife knuckles white. "It's going to be okay," Clara said, not knowing if it was true. "We're going to be okay." Minutes crawled by. The wagon moved painfully slow through the deep snow, each step an eternity. Clara kept looking back, straining to see what was happening behind them. She heard the gunshot before she saw anything. A single crack, sharp and clear in the frozen air. "Mama!" Annie screamed. "Don't stop!" Clara forced out, her voice shaking. "We don't stop!" But Sam had already turned. Bess was already riding back toward the sound. "Samuel Whitmore, don't you dare!" He didn't listen. Of course he didn't. He was his father's son, rushing toward danger when he should run away. "Josie!" Clara thrust Lily into her oldest daughter's arms. "Take the reins. Keep moving north. You'll see the Gate Callahan Ranch. Don't stop for anything." "Mama, what are you?" But Clara was already gone, jumping down from the wagon, running back through the snow toward her son, toward the gunshot, toward whatever nightmare was unfolding behind them. She found them in a small clearing where the trees thinned. Silas lay on his back in the snow, clutching his shoulder blood seeping between his fingers. His gun lay several feet away, half buried in white. Eli stood over him. His own gun still raised, his expression like carved stone. And Sam. Sam had arrived just in time to see it all. "He shot first," Eli said without looking away from Silas. "I want you both to understand that. He came up behind me and shot first. I defended myself." "You bastard!" Silas's voice was a snarl of pain and fury. "You ruined everything. She was supposed to be mine. The farm was supposed to be mine." "Nothing is yours." Eli's voice was cold. "Not the farm, not the woman, not those children. You've got no claim to any of them. I'll kill you. I swear to God You'll do nothing. Eli finally lowered his gun, but he didn't holster it. Because if I ever see you near Clara or her children again, I won't aim for your shoulder. Understand? Silas said nothing, but his eyes burned with hatred. Sam. Clara reached for her son, pulling him close. Are you all right? Are you hurt? I'm fine, Mama. But his voice shook, and his face was the color of old snow. I thought when I heard the shot, I know. She held him tight, feeling his heart pound against hers. But it's over now. It's over. It's not over. Silas laughed a wet, ugly sound. You think you've won? You think you can just ride off into the sunset with your stranger and your brats? I have friends. I have connections. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you are, running off with a man you've known a week, exposing your children to. Enough. Eli's voice cut through like a knife. You want to spread gossip? Go ahead. Destroy your own reputation while you're at it. The whole town saw you harass a widow in the general store. Doc Sullivan knows what you've been doing. The sheriff's already heard complaints. You're bluffing. Try me. Eli stepped closer, and Silas flinched despite himself. I spent 15 years building something from nothing. I know how to protect what's mine. And Clara Whitmore is under my protection now. She's not yours. No, she's not. Eli's eyes never wavered. She's her own, but I'll stand between her and anyone who tries to hurt her for as long as she lets me. And right now, Whitmore, that means you. Silas tried to rise, gasped in pain, and fell back. The fight was going out of him, Clara saw. The wound wasn't fatal. Eli had been careful about that, but it was enough to stop him. For now. We're leaving, Clara said, her voice steadier than she felt. We're going to Mr. Callahan's ranch, and we're going to build a new life there. You won't follow us. You won't send anyone after us. You'll pretend we don't exist. And if I don't, then the next time won't be a shoulder wound. Clara surprised herself with the steel in her voice. I've lost too much to let you take what's left. Cross me again, Silas, and I'll end you myself. She didn't know if she meant it. Maybe she did. After everything, after William's death, after 2 years of struggle, after watching this man terrorize her children, maybe she meant every word. Silas must have seen something in her eyes that convinced him, because he looked away first. Get out of my sight, Clara said, and don't ever let me see you again. They left him there in the snow, bleeding and beaten. Clara didn't look back. She couldn't afford to. The wagon had stopped a few hundred yards ahead. Josie hadn't quite managed to keep moving, but Clara couldn't blame her. The children's faces were pressed against the side, watching with terrified eyes as their mother and brother returned. It's over, Clara told them, her voice breaking. It's really over now. Uncle Silas, Tommy asked weakly. He won't bother us anymore. Ever. They completed the journey in silence, each of them processing what had happened. Clara rode with Lily in her arms, her daughter's small body a comfort against the cold. Sam stayed close to the wagon, his earlier bravado replaced by quiet shock. Annie had stopped crying, but her grip on Biscuit was tight enough to make the cat squirm. The Callahan ranch gate appeared just as the sun broke through the clouds, sending shafts of golden light across the snow. Beyond it, the house and barn waited solid and welcoming, promising warmth and safety. Home, Clara thought. This is home now. Eli dismounted, first opening the gate wide. As the wagon passed through, he reached up and briefly touched Clara's arm. You did good back there, he said quietly. Facing him like that, standing your ground. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice. You chose courage. His eyes held hers. That's not nothing, Clara. They unloaded in a kind of daze. Eli showed the children to their rooms, let them explore, answered their questions with patient care. Mrs. Martinez Rosa, the school teacher from town, had come up earlier to prepare food and light fires. She welcomed Clara like an old friend, pressing warm bread and hot soup into grateful hands. "Eli told me about your situation," Rosa said, as they worked together in the kitchen. "What you've been through with that brother-in-law. Word travels fast. In a small town, always." Rosa smiled, but her eyes were serious. "I want you to know you're not alone here. The women in Miller's Creek, we look out for each other. If you need anything, you just ask." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything. Just accept the help. That's hard enough for most of us." That night, after the children were settled, Tommy in a real bed with proper blankets, the girls sharing a room with an actual door, Sam in his own space for the first time in his life, Clara found Eli on the front porch. He stood with his back to the door, staring out at the snow-covered valley. "You should be resting," she said, stepping out beside him. "It's been a long day." "Can't sleep. Too much to think about." He glanced at her sideways. "How are the children?" "Exhausted. Confused, but safe. That's all that matters." "And you?" Clara considered the question. How was she terrified? Grateful, hopeful, heartbroken. All at once, all tangled together. "I'm alive," she said finally. "My children are alive and under a solid roof with full bellies. Right now, that's more than I dared hope for a week ago." Eli nodded slowly. "It's not much of a start, I know. There's so much still uncertain. But Clara," he turned to face her fully, "I meant what I said back there, about protecting you, about standing between you and anyone who tries to hurt you." "Why?" "And don't tell me it's because of your mother or some promise you made. There's more to it than that." For a long moment he didn't answer. The silence stretched between them, filled with the whisper of wind through snow-laden branches. "Because when I saw you in that store," Eli said slowly, "selling your wedding ring to feed your children, standing there with a split lip's worth of pride and a mountain's worth of determination, I saw someone worth fighting for. Someone worth risking everything for." Clara felt her breath catch. "I've spent my whole adult life alone," Eli continued. "Told myself I was better that way, safer. Couldn't lose what I didn't have. But safe isn't the same as happy, and alone isn't the same as free." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying—" He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "I'm saying I don't know what this is. Between us. If it's anything at all. But I want to find out. If you'll let me." Clara thought about William, about the life they'd built, the love they'd shared, the vows she'd made. She thought about 2 years of grief and struggle and desperate survival. And she thought about this man, this stranger who'd paid her debts and faced down her enemy and looked at her like she was worth saving. "I can't promise anything," she said quietly. "I'm broken in ways I don't even understand yet. I've got 5 children and more baggage than any wagon could carry. I don't know if I can love again. Don't know if I even know how. I'm not asking for promises. I'm not asking for love." Eli's voice was gentle. "I'm asking for a chance, to get to know you, to earn your trust, to be someone you can count on. And if that's all it ever is, if I can't give you more, then I'll take what you can give and be grateful for it." He met her eyes. "I've been alone a long time, Clara. Your company, your children's company, that's already more than I had. Already more than I expected." Clara looked at him, really looked, and saw something she'd been too scared to see before. Loneliness as deep as her own. Hope as fragile as hers. A man standing at the edge of something, terrified and brave, and reaching out. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Okay, we try. We see what happens." She took a breath. But slow. Everything slow. The children need stability, not upheaval. They need to feel safe before they can accept anything else. "I can do slow." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I've got nothing but time." They stood together in the cold, watching the stars appear one by one. Not touching, not quite, but close enough that Clara could feel the warmth of him beside her. It wasn't love. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was possibility. And after everything she'd been through, possibility felt like the most precious gift in the world. Inside the house, Clara could hear Annie's voice high and excited showing Lily something in their new room. She could hear Sam asking Josie questions, actually talking for once, instead of brooding in silence. She could hear Tommy coughing, but less than before the medicine doing its work. Her family. Battered and scarred, but alive. Still together. Whatever came next, they'd face it that way. Together. "We should go in," she said finally. "It's cold." "It is." But Eli didn't move immediately. "Clara." "Yes. Thank you. For trusting me. For giving this a chance." She thought about all the reasons she shouldn't trust him. All the ways this could go wrong. All the times she'd been let down by people who'd promised safety. But she also thought about the way he'd faced Silas. The way he'd been with her children. The way he'd asked permission before doing anything given her choices when she'd had none. "Thank you for being worth trusting," she said. And then she went inside to be with her children, leaving Eli alone on the porch, watching the stars wheel overhead in their ancient, unchanging patterns. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adjustments, the hard work of building a life from fragments. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, Clara fell asleep without fear. The first week at Callahan Ranch passed in a blur of adjustment and small discoveries. Tommy's cough faded day by day until his breathing came easy and his cheeks regained their color. Annie found a spot near the kitchen window where Biscuit liked to sleep in the afternoon sun. Lily appointed herself official greeter of the chickens each morning, her delighted giggles echoing across the yard. But it was Sam who surprised Clara most. She found him in the barn on their 4th morning watching Eli work with a young mare. The horse was skittish, tossing her head and dancing sideways whenever Eli approached. But Eli moved slowly, speaking in low tones that Clara couldn't quite hear, and gradually the mare began to settle. "He's patient," Sam said without looking at his mother. "More patient than I expected." "Most good things take patience. Papa was patient too." Sam's voice caught. "Remember how he used to train the dogs, would spend hours just sitting with them, letting them come to him?" "I remember." Clara moved to stand beside her son, close enough to touch, but not quite touching. "Your father had a gift with animals." "Mr. Callahan says I might have the same gift." Sam finally looked at her, and Clara saw something new in his eyes. Not hope exactly, that was still too fragile, but something like possibility. "He says if I want, he'll teach me to train horses. Real training, not just riding, the kind that takes skill. Would you like that?" Sam was quiet for a moment. "I think Papa would have liked it. He always said horses were the most honest creatures on earth, that you could trust a horse more than most people." "He did say that. So maybe—" Sam's jaw tightened. "Maybe learning to work with them would be a way of keeping him close, even though we're not on his land anymore." Clara felt her heart crack open. Her son, who'd been carrying anger like armor for 2 years, was finally letting himself grieve properly. Finally letting himself feel something besides rage. "I think that's a beautiful idea," she said softly. "It doesn't mean I trust him. Mr. Callahan, I mean. I know. He's still a stranger. He could still turn out to be like Uncle Silas." "He could." Clara didn't believe it, but she understood why Sam needed to say it. "We'll watch. We'll be careful. But we'll also give him a fair chance." Sam nodded slowly. Then, in a voice so quiet, she almost missed it. "He hasn't yelled. Not once. Not even when Lily knocked over the milk bucket yesterday, or when Annie left the barn door open and 2 of the chickens got out. No, he hasn't. Papa never yelled either. No, he didn't." They stood together watching Eli work the mare, and Clara felt something shift between her and her son. Not quite forgiveness, there was nothing to forgive but acceptance. Understanding. A willingness to move forward instead of staying locked in the past. "I'm going to help him," Sam said finally. "With the mare, if that's okay." "It's more than okay." Sam climbed the fence and dropped into the corral, approaching Eli with none of the hostility he'd shown before. Clara watched Eli greet her son, watched him hand Sam a lead rope and begin explaining something, watched her boy's shoulders relax for the first time in months. Maybe, she thought, maybe this could work. The days settled into a rhythm. Clara cooked and cleaned and managed the household with an efficiency born of years of practice. But here, unlike at the old farm, she had help. Eli's house was well stocked with supplies. The kitchen was warm and well equipped. And most importantly, she wasn't constantly worried about running out of food or firewood or time. She could breathe here. For the first time in 2 years, she could actually breathe. Josie took to the new life with surprising ease. Rosa Martinez came twice a week to give lessons, reading, writing, arithmetic, and Josie drank in the knowledge like water after a drought. "She's brilliant," Rosa told Clara one afternoon. "Truly gifted. If she'd had proper schooling from the start, she'd be teaching circles around most adults." She taught herself to read when she was 6, wouldn't stop asking questions until she figured out how the letters worked. With the right education, she could do anything, be anything. Rosa's eyes were serious. "I'd like to work with her more if you'll allow it. Maybe even prepare her for the entrance exams at the territorial school in Cheyenne." Cheyenne. Clara's heart lurched. "That's so far." "It's an opportunity. The kind that doesn't come often for girls out here." Rosa touched her arm gently. "Think about it. There's no rush." Clara thought about it constantly. Josie, who'd spent 2 years being a second mother, who'd sacrificed her childhood for her siblings. Josie deserved chances, deserved more than this life could offer. But the thought of losing her even to something good made Clara's chest ache. 3 weeks after their arrival, Tommy was well enough to explore the ranch. Clara watched from the kitchen window as he wandered through the barn with Lily in tow, the 2 youngest forming their own little exploration party. Tommy had always been gentle, and Lily adored him with the fierce devotion of a 4-year-old. "They're looking for the new kittens," Eli said, appearing beside her at the window. "Barn cat had a litter last week. Tom's been asking about them since he heard. He's always loved animals. Gets that from William. Good trait in a rancher." Eli paused, and Clara felt him choosing his next words carefully. "He asked me something this morning. Tommy did." "What?" "He asked if I was going to be his new papa." Clara's heart stopped. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth, that I didn't know, that it wasn't my decision to make. That his real papa would always be his papa no matter what happened." Eli's voice was steady, but she heard the emotion beneath. "I told him that I cared about his family and wanted to help them, but that words like papa were serious and shouldn't be used unless everyone was ready." That was... Clara's throat closed. That was the right thing to say. "I hope so." Eli turned to face her. "Clara, I know we said slow, and I meant it. But the children are going to have questions. They're going to need to understand what this arrangement is, what we are to each other." "What are we to each other?" "I don't know." The honesty in his voice was painful. "I know what I want us to be, but wanting and being are different things." "What do you want?" Eli was quiet for a long moment. Outside, Tommy's laughter echoed as Lily squealed about something, probably a kitten. "I want to be someone you can count on," he said finally. "Not just a provider or a protector, but a partner. Someone who shares the burdens and the joys. Someone who knows your fears and dreams and helps you face one and reach the other." "That sounds like a husband." "Maybe." He met her eyes. "Would that be so terrible?" Clara thought about William, about the vows she'd made to him, the life they'd built, the love that had grown quietly and steadily over 12 years. She thought about the grief that still lived in her chest, the guilt that whispered she was betraying his memory by even considering another man. And she thought about the way Eli looked at her, the way he treated her children, the way he gave her space and choices and never demanded anything in return. No, she heard herself say. It wouldn't be terrible. Something shifted in Eli's expression. Hope carefully banked. You mean that? I don't know what I mean anymore. Clara pressed her hands to her temples. Everything's happening so fast. A month ago I was planning to sell my wedding ring for flour. Now I'm standing in your kitchen talking about futures and partners and… Clara. Eli caught her hands, lowering them gently. His touch was warm, steady. I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know where I stand, what I'm hoping for. Why? Because honesty matters. Because I've spent too many years keeping everything locked inside, and I don't want to do that anymore. Not with you. He released her hands. Take whatever time you need. Weeks, months, years. I'm not going anywhere. Clara looked at this man, this impossible, patient, decent man, and felt something crack in the wall around her heart. A small fissure letting light seep through. I need time, she said. I know. I need to know this is real, that you're real, that you won't change once the newness wears off and the daily frustrations pile up. I understand. And I need… Her voice broke. I need to know it's okay, that William would understand, that I'm not betraying him by wanting something again. Eli's eyes softened. Clara, I didn't know your husband, but everything I've heard tells me he was a good man. A man who loved you and his children more than anything. Do you really think a man like that would want you to spend the rest of your life alone? Would want you to suffer just to honor his memory? I don't know what he would want. Tears were falling now. I don't know anything anymore. Then maybe… Eli pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, offering it without touching her tears. Maybe you start by knowing this: you deserve happiness, whatever form that takes. Whoever it's with. You deserve to live, not just survive. Clara took the handkerchief, pressed it to her eyes. You keep saying that. Surviving versus living. Because it's true, and because I spent too many years just surviving to not recognize it when I see it. His voice dropped. You're alive, Clara. For the first time since I met you, you're really alive. The fear is fading from your eyes. You laugh with your children instead of just managing them. You're starting to imagine a future instead of just dreading the next day. That's because of you. No, that's because of you. I just provided the space. You did the growing. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe she was changing, healing, becoming something more than the hollow shell she'd been for 2 years. I need to check on Tommy, she said, not because she did, but because she needed to move to think, to process everything that was happening. Of course. Eli stepped back, giving her space. I'll be in the barn if you need me. He left, and Clara stood alone in the kitchen, the handkerchief damp in her hand, her heart beating in a rhythm she didn't quite recognize. That night, Annie sang. It happened at supper when Lily was fussy and nothing seemed to calm her. Annie, without thinking, began humming a lullaby their grandmother used to sing, passed down through generations of Whitmore women. The humming became words. Soft at first, hesitant, but growing stronger as Lily settled against her sister's shoulder. Clara froze her spoon halfway to her mouth. She couldn't remember the last time Annie had sung. Before William's death, certainly. Maybe even before that, when fear of Silas had already begun to steal the joy from their lives. But here now, in this strange new kitchen with a stranger at the head of the table, Annie was singing. The song ended, and Lily was asleep, and Annie looked up to find everyone staring at her. What? She asked, cheeks flushing. You sang. Sam said, his voice rough with emotion. Annie, you haven't sung in forever. Annie looked down at Lily. She was upset. It just came out. It was beautiful. Clara's voice was barely a whisper. Your grandmother would have been so proud. Papa used to love when you sang, Josie added softly. He said you had the voice of an angel. Annie's eyes filled with tears. I forgot how to do it. After everything, the songs just went away. They came back. Clara reached across the table, taking her daughter's hand. That's what matters. They came back. Eli said nothing, but Clara saw him watching Annie with an expression that made her chest tighten. Not pity, never pity, but something like recognition. Like he understood exactly what it meant to lose something precious and then find it again. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Clara found herself on the porch again. The stars were brilliant overhead, undimmed by clouds, and the cold was sharp but not unbearable. Couldn't sleep again. Eli's voice came from the shadows. He'd been there all along, she realized, keeping watch. Annie sang. I heard. She hasn't sung since before William died. I thought, Clara's voice caught. I thought that part of her was gone forever. Nothing's ever gone forever. Eli moved closer, standing beside her at the rail. Just hidden, waiting for the right moment to come back. Is that true for people too? For the parts of ourselves we lose? I don't know. Maybe. He was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about something. Something I should probably tell you. What? The day I saw you in the store with Silas threatening you and your hand shaking on that wedding ring, I told myself I was helping a stranger in need, doing the right thing for its own sake, keeping a promise to my mother's memory. Wasn't that true? Partly, but not entirely. Eli turned to face her. The truth is, Clara, I saw you and I felt something. Something I haven't felt in 15 years. Something I thought I'd killed in myself during the war. What was it? Hope. The word hung in the frozen air between them. I saw you, and for the first time since I was 23 years old, I hoped for something more than just getting through the next day. Clara felt her heart hammering. You didn't even know me. I know. It doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense. A stranger in a store, a split-second decision, and now here we are living together, raising your children together, building something that could be... He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I'm not explaining this well. You're explaining it fine. I just need you to understand when I say I'm willing to wait, when I say I'll take whatever you can give, I mean it. But I also need you to know that what I feel isn't casual, isn't simple, isn't going to fade if you take too long to decide. What do you feel? Eli met her eyes, and in the starlight, she saw his walls come down. All of them, all at once. I love you, he said quietly. I think I've loved you since the moment you stood in that store with tears in your eyes and refused to break. I love your strength and your fear and your fierce devotion to your children. I love the way you hum when you're cooking, and the way you check on each child before you go to sleep, and the way you look at the sunrise like it's a gift you don't quite trust. Clara couldn't breathe. You don't have to say it back. You don't have to feel it back. Eli's voice roughened. I've spent too many years not saying the things that mattered. I didn't want this to be one of them. The silence stretched between them. Inside the house, a child coughed in their sleep. The wind picked up, sending snow swirling off the roof. I can't say it back, Clara finally managed. Not yet. There's still too much William, the children, everything. I know. But I feel something. She forced herself to meet his eyes. Something I didn't expect. Something that scares me, because it means letting go of what I was, of who I was, and becoming someone new. That's enough. Eli's voice was thick with emotion. That's more than enough. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face. Just a brush of fingers against her cheek, gentle as snowfall. Clara closed her eyes. We should go inside, she whispered. It's cold. It is. But neither of them moved. They stood together in the frozen night on the edge of something neither of them fully understood. Two wounded souls finding their way toward each other, one careful step at a time. When Clara finally went to bed, she dreamed of William. But for the first time since his death, he was smiling, waving goodbye, walking away toward a light she couldn't follow, letting her go. The next morning, everything changed again. A rider came just after breakfast, pushing his horse hard through the fresh snow. Clara recognized him from town, young Deputy Walsh, barely 20, his face red with cold and exertion. "Mr. Callahan!" He gasped, dismounting at the porch. "You need to come to town, now." "What's happened?" "It's Silas Whitmore. He's filed charges against you. Attempted murder, he's calling it. Got himself a lawyer from Cheyenne, some fancy fellow who's stirring up all kinds of trouble." Clara's blood went cold. She saw Eli's expression harden, saw his hands tighten into fists. "The shooting was self-defense. He drew first." "I know that. Sheriff knows that. But Whitmore's got witnesses, least that's what his lawyer claims. Says he was just riding to check on his poor widowed sister-in-law, and you ambushed him without provocation." "That's a lie." "Course it is. But the judge is coming from Cheyenne next week for the circuit court, and Whitmore's lawyer is pushing for a trial." Deputy Walsh looked genuinely distressed. "Sheriff sent me to warn you. Thinks you should get your own lawyer. Get your story straight. Maybe find those children to testify about what really happened." "No!" Eli's voice was steel. "I'm not putting Clara's children on a witness stand. They've been through enough." "Then you might need to start thinking about other options. Because Whitmore. He ain't backing down. And his lawyer's good. Real good." After the deputy left, Clara found Eli in the barn, saddling Solomon with hands that shook with barely controlled fury. "You're going to town." "I have to. Have to see the sheriff find a lawyer, figure out how to fight this." "Eli." Clara caught his arm. "This is because of me. Because you helped me. If you hadn't—" "If I hadn't, you'd be married to that snake right now or worse. Your children would be scattered across the territory. You'd have lost everything." Eli's eyes met hers. "I'd make the same choice again. Every single time." "He could send you to prison." "He could try." "This is serious." "I know it is." Eli put his hands on her shoulders, steadying her. "But Clara, I've survived war. I've survived loss and grief and 15 years of loneliness. I'll survive this too." "What if you don't?" "Then you take the children and you keep going. You build the life we started. You don't let Silas Whitmore win. I can't do this without you." The words came out before she could stop them. "I don't want to do this without you." Something shifted in Eli's expression. "Clara, I know we said slow. I know I said I needed time. But time doesn't mean much if you're not here to spend it with." "What are you saying?" Clara took a breath. Everything in her screamed to hold back, to protect herself, to not risk another loss. But she looked at this man who'd given her everything and asked for nothing, and she knew. "I'm saying—" Her voice shook. "I'm saying I don't want to wait anymore. I'm saying if Silas Whitmore is going to try to destroy what we're building, then we should make it real. Make it permanent. Make it something worth fighting for." Eli went very still. "Clara, are you—" "I'm asking you to marry me. Before the trial. Before Silas can do any more damage. I want to be your wife, Eli Callahan. Not because I need protection. Not because I'm scared. Because I want to. Because I love you." The words hung in the frozen barn air, impossibly heavy and light at the same time. "You love me." Eli repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "I love you." And saying it again, she realized it was true. Completely, terrifyingly true. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe when you faced down Silas. Maybe when you were patient with Sam. Maybe when you let Annie's singing pass without comment, because you understood how precious it was. But somewhere in these past weeks, I fell in love with you." "Clara." Eli pulled her close, and she felt his heart pounding against her cheek. I've been waiting my whole life for someone to say those words to me. Is that a yes? That's a yes. That's 1,000 yeses. That's every yes I have left to give. He kissed her, then gentle and fierce all at once, and Clara felt the last wall around her heart crumble to dust. She was done surviving, done hiding, done being afraid of what wanting something might cost her. Whatever came next, Silas the trial, the uncertain future, they would face it together, as husband and wife. They married 3 days later in Judge Rowan's office with Doc Sullivan and Rosa Martinez as witnesses. Clara wore a simple blue dress that Maggie O'Brien had altered overnight, working by lamplight to make it fit. The children stood in a row beside them, Josie holding Lily, Annie gripping Tommy's hand, Sam standing slightly apart, but present watching. "Do you, Clara May Whitmore, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Clara looked at Eli. At the hope in his eyes, the steadiness of his hands, the way he stood like a man who'd finally found what he'd been searching for. "I do." "Do you, Elijah Thomas Callahan, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice was rough with emotion. "From now until forever." Judge Rowan smiled, and Clara remembered another wedding 14 years ago, when she'd been young and terrified and so full of hope it hurt. She'd thought that was her only chance at happiness. She'd been wrong. "By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Eli, you may kiss your bride." He did gentle and sweet, and Clara heard Annie's delighted squeal, heard Tommy whisper something to Josie, heard the quiet that might have been Sam's acceptance. When they pulled apart, Eli looked at the children. "I know this is strange. I know I'm not your father, and I'm not trying to replace him, but I'm hoping you'll let me be part of your family anyway." Lily, who'd been squirming in Josie's arms, reached out toward Eli. "Up," she demanded. "Up, up." Eli looked at Clara, uncertain, and she nodded. He took Lily from Josie's arms, settling the child against his hip with surprising naturalness. "Hello, little one." "You're tall," Lily informed him seriously. "I am." "I like tall." She patted his cheek with her small hand. "You can stay." The laughter broke the tension. Even Sam cracked something that might have been a smile. "Well," Judge Rowan said, closing his book. "That's settled then. Now about this trial." The wedding celebration was brief. There was too much to prepare for what was coming. Silas's lawyer had arrived from Cheyenne, a slick man named Harrison Webb, who dressed like Eastern money and spoke like a snake. "He's claiming premeditated assault." Judge Rowan explained that afternoon, his face grave. "Says Eli lured Silas out to the road with intent to kill him, and that Clara was complicit in the scheme." "That's insane." Eli's voice was controlled, but Clara saw the fury beneath. "He followed us. He was stalking Clara and the children for weeks before that day." "I know. We all know. But Webb is good at twisting facts. He's got Silas playing the concerned uncle worried about his poor nieces and nephews living with a violent stranger." The judge's mouth twisted with distaste. "He's painting you as a predator, Eli. A man who preyed on a vulnerable widow, isolated her from her family, and attacked anyone who tried to intervene." "The children were there," Clara said. "Sam saw everything. They can testify." "No." Eli's voice was flat. "I won't put them through that." "Eli." "I said no." He looked at her, and she saw the steel in his eyes. "Those children have been through enough trauma. I won't add being cross-examined by a Cheyenne lawyer to the list." "Then what do we do?" Judge Rowan leaned back in his chair. "We find other witnesses, people who saw Silas's behavior before that day, people who can speak to his harassment, his threats, his pattern of intimidation." "Maggie O'Brien," Clara said immediately. "She was there the first day in the store. She heard everything Silas said to me." "Good. Who else?" Doc Sullivan treated Tommy. He saw how scared the children were when he came to the farm. And Rosa was there when we first arrived at the ranch. She saw how shaken we all were. "We'll need more. Character witnesses for Eli, people who can speak to his history, his reputation." I've got those. Eli's voice was grim. Men I served with. Ranchers I've worked for. People who know me well enough to know I don't start fights, but I finish them. The week before the trial passed in tense preparation. Clara watched Eli retreat into himself, becoming quiet and distant in ways that frightened her. He still treated the children with patience, still did his work, still held her at night. But something had closed behind his eyes. "Talk to me," she said one evening, finding him alone on the porch. "You're carrying something. I can see it." "Just thinking about the war." "Tell me." Eli was silent for a long moment. Then slowly the words came. "There was a battle. Antietam. You've probably heard of it. Bloodiest day in American history, they call it now. I was 23 years old, and I watched men die by the thousands. Boys, some of them. 16, 17 years old, crying for their mothers while they bled out in the mud." Clara took his hand, saying nothing. "After when it was over, and we were counting the dead, I found myself standing in a field of bodies, and I realized I felt nothing. No horror, no grief, no relief at surviving. Just nothing. I'd become a machine, a weapon that walked and talked and followed orders, but wasn't really human anymore. But you came back. You built this ranch. You helped me, helped my children. I forced myself to feel again. Took years. Reading books, working with animals, letting myself care about the land, about the horses, about something other than survival." Eli's grip tightened on her hand. "But Webb's going to bring up the war. He's going to try to paint me as damaged goods, a violent man who never really left the battlefield. Anyone who meets you knows that's not true." "Do they, Clara? I shot Silas without hesitation, didn't even blink. What does that say about me?" "It says you protected my family when we needed protecting." Clara turned to face him fully. "It says you're the kind of man who acts when action is needed. That's not damage, Eli. That's strength. Webb won't see it that way. Then we'll make the jury see it differently." The trial began on a bitter, cold morning, the courthouse packed with curious townspeople. Clara sat in the front row with the children refusing to hide in the back, like she was ashamed of something. Silas took the stand first. His arm was still in a sling, playing up the injury for sympathy. He spoke in a measured, reasonable voice about his concerns for his late brother's children, about the strange man who'd appeared from nowhere, about his shock at being ambushed on a public road. "I was simply riding to check on my family," Silas said, his face a mask of wounded innocence. "The road to the old Whitmore farm passes near where the shooting occurred. I wasn't following anyone, I was taking the most direct route." "And you had no intention of confronting Mr. Callahan?" Webb prompted. "None whatsoever. I'd never even spoken to the man before that day, but when I saw him riding toward me, something in his manner concerned me. He seemed aggressive, hostile." "What happened next?" "He drew his weapon without warning. No words, no attempt at conversation, just violence." Silas's voice trembled convincingly. "I barely managed to get my own gun clear before he shot me." Clara's hands clenched so tight her nails drew blood from her palms. Beside her, Sam was rigid with fury, his jaw working, his fist pressed against his thigh. "Liar," Sam whispered. "He's lying." "Quiet," Clara murmured back. "Our turn is coming." Eli's lawyer, a gruff, practical man named Thomas Garrett, took his time with the cross-examination. "Mr. Whitmore, you say you were simply passing through on your way to check on your sister-in-law. But isn't it true that the most direct route to the Whitmore farm doesn't pass anywhere near where this shooting occurred?" Silas hesitated. "I may have taken a different path that day. The snow can change things." "Indeed. The snow." Garrett pulled out a folded paper. "I have here a statement from Deputy Walsh, who examined the tracks at the scene. According to his assessment, your horse's tracks came from the east, from the direction of Miller's Creek, and followed the same path Mrs. Callahan's wagon had taken from the Whitmore farm. Not crossed it, Mr. Whitmore, followed it. I don't know anything about tracks. I just know where I was going. Convenient. Garrett paced slowly. You also testified that you'd never spoken to Mr. Callahan before that day. But isn't it true that just 3 days prior you entered Mrs. Callahan's home while Mr. Callahan was present, made threats against her family, and were asked to leave at gunpoint? That's a mischaracterization. Were you or were you not ordered to leave the Whitmore property by Mr. Callahan? Silas's composure cracked slightly. There was a conversation. Things were said on both sides. Simple question, Mr. Whitmore. Yes or no? Did Mr. Callahan tell you to leave and never return? A long pause. Yes. And yet, 3 days later, you just happened to be riding along the very route Mrs. Callahan's family was taking to their new home. What a remarkable coincidence. I didn't know they were leaving that day. Didn't you? Garrett turned to the jury. The prosecution would have you believe that my client attacked an innocent man for no reason. But I intend to show that Mr. Silas Whitmore had been harassing his sister-in-law for months. That he used financial pressure, verbal threats, and physical intimidation to try to force her into a marriage she didn't want. And that on the day of the shooting, he deliberately followed her family with intent to cause harm. The witnesses came one by one. Maggie O'Brien testified about what she'd heard in her store, her Irish temper flaring when Webb suggested she might be exaggerating. Doc Sullivan spoke about the fear he'd seen in the children's eyes about Tommy's illness and the family's desperate circumstances. Rosa Martinez described Clara's arrival at the ranch, shaken, exhausted, clearly fleeing from something terrible. But it was the surprise witness who turned the tide. The defense calls Deputy Thomas Walsh. Walsh took the stand looking uncomfortable, but determined. Under Garrett's questioning, he revealed something no one had expected. I was asked by Sheriff Mills to do some investigating into Mr. Whitmore's background before the trial. Standard procedure in cases like this. Walsh's voice was steady. I found some concerning things. Such as, Mr. Whitmore has filed similar charges before, 3 times in fact, against 3 different men in 3 different towns over the past 8 years. The courtroom stirred. Even Judge Rowan leaned forward. And what was the outcome of those cases? All dismissed. The pattern was the same each time. A widow with property. A man who helped her. Mr. Whitmore claiming assault and pressing charges. But when investigators dug deeper, they found evidence that Mr. Whitmore had been the aggressor in each case. Objection. Webb was on his feet. This is hearsay, Your Honor. Previous dismissed charges have no bearing. I'll allow it. Judge Rowan's voice was cold. The jury should hear the full picture. Walsh continued detailing Silas's history, the pattern of predation, the women he'd targeted, the men he'd tried to destroy when they got in his way. With each revelation, Clara saw the jury's faces harden. When Eli finally took the stand, he told the truth simply and directly. The confrontation in Clara's home. Silas's threats. The following morning when he'd spotted a rider trailing their wagon and ridden back to investigate. He drew first, Eli said, his voice steady. Came out of the trees with his gun already aimed. I had maybe half a second to react. I shot him in the shoulder because I wanted to stop him, not kill him. If I'd wanted him dead, he'd be dead. And why didn't you want him dead? Garrett asked. After everything he'd done to Mrs. Callahan and her family. Eli's eyes found Clara in the courtroom. Because the children were watching. Because Clara had already seen enough violence. Because becoming a killer to stop a bully isn't victory, it's surrender. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Not guilty. The words echoed through the courtroom, and Clara felt something break loose in her chest, a tension she'd been carrying for weeks, maybe months, maybe years. She was on her feet before she knew it, pushing through the crowd to reach Eli, throwing her arms around him while the children followed in a wave of relief. It's over, she whispered against his chest. It's really over. Almost. Eli pulled back his eyes, going to where Silas sat, his face white with fury. There's one more thing. He walked toward his former accuser, and the courtroom went silent. Silas shrank back, but there was nowhere to go. "I could press charges," Eli said quietly. "False accusation, perjury, harassment, enough to put you away for years. You wouldn't dare. I could, but I won't." Eli leaned closer, his voice dropping so only Silas could hear. "Because I want you to live with this. I want you to know that you tried to destroy a good woman and her children, and you failed. I want you to spend the rest of your miserable life knowing that they're happy, that they're safe, that they have everything you tried to take from them." He straightened, his voice rising so the whole courtroom could hear. "But Silas Whitmore, if I ever see you within 100 miles of my family again, there won't be a trial. There won't be lawyers or judges or juries. There'll just be you and me and whatever God you answer to. Do you understand?" Silas said nothing. He didn't have to. Everyone in that courtroom knew he was beaten. They left Miller's Creek that afternoon, the whole family packed into the wagon together. The children were giddy with relief. Even Sam was smiling, really smiling for the first time since his father died. "Mama?" Annie's voice came from the wagon bed, where she was curled up with Lily and Biscuit. "Are we going home now?" Clara looked at Eli, at the man who'd given her back her life. "Yes, baby. We're going home." The Callahan Ranch emerged from the winter landscape like a promise. Smoke rose from the chimney. The barn stood solid against the snow. Everything looked exactly as they'd left it, but somehow completely different. Because this time, they were coming home without fear. Spring came slowly to the valley, melting the snow in patches and sending the first tentative green shoots pushing through the brown earth. Clara planted a garden behind the house, vegetables and herbs and the flowers her mother used to grow. The children helped even Sam, who turned out to have a gentle touch with living things. Tommy got stronger every day, his cough completely gone, his cheeks full and rosy. Lily learned to walk without holding on to anything, toddling after the chickens with delighted determination. Annie sang constantly now, while she worked, while she played, while she helped Clara in the kitchen. And Josie made a decision. "I want to go to Cheyenne," she said one evening after the younger ones were in bed. "The territorial school. Rosa says I could take the exams this fall." Clara felt her heart twist. "That's very far away." "I know." Josie's eyes met hers, and Clara saw not a child, but a young woman, someone with dreams bigger than this valley could hold. "But Mama, I want to learn. I want to be something, a teacher maybe, or a doctor or something that helps people. I can't do that here. And if I say no, then I'll stay. I'll help with the ranch and the family, and I won't complain." Josie's voice was steady. "But I'm asking you to say yes." Clara looked at her daughter, her firstborn, her helper, the girl who'd been a mother to her siblings when Clara couldn't be. Josie had sacrificed so much already. She deserved the chance to fly. "Yes," Clara said, her voice breaking. "Yes, you can go." Josie's face lit up like sunrise. "But you write every week. And you come home for holidays. And you tell me immediately if anything goes wrong." "I will, Mama. I promise." Later that night, Clara told Eli about the conversation. They lay together in the darkness of their bedroom, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. "She's too young," Clara said. 14 is too young to leave home. She's the same age I was when I left. That's different. You had no choice." "Neither does she, really." Eli's voice was thoughtful. "Some people are meant for bigger things than one piece of land can offer. Josie's one of them. Trying to keep her here would be like trying to hold back the tide." "I know, Clara's voice broke. "I just got everyone safe. I just got us all together. And now she wants to leave. That's what children do. They grow, they go, they build their own lives." Eli pressed a kiss to her hair. "But they come back. The good ones, the ones who were loved properly, they always come back. Promise me we're doing the right thing. Promise me she'll be okay." "I can't promise that. Nobody can promise that. But I can promise you this, whatever happens, you won't face it alone. We're a family now. Whatever comes, we face it together." Clara thought about all the times she'd felt alone, all the nights she'd lain awake, terrified, wondering how she would keep her children fed and safe. All the mornings she'd forced herself out of bed when every part of her wanted to give up. She wasn't alone anymore. She would never be alone again. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." Summer brought warmth and growth and the completion of something Clara had been working on in secret. On a warm evening in July, she led Eli and the children out to the small hill behind the house where the wildflowers grew thick and the view stretched all the way to the mountains. "What is this?" Eli asked, looking at the blanket she'd spread, the lanterns she'd placed, the food she'd prepared. "A celebration. Of our first 6 months together. Of surviving everything that tried to destroy us." Clara took his hand. "And of this." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside, nestled on a square of velvet, was her wedding ring. The one she'd almost sold for flour. The one from her marriage to William. "Clara, I want you to have it." Her voice was steady. "Not to wear it wouldn't fit, but to keep. To know that the love I had for William doesn't compete with the love I have for you. They're both part of me, both part of who I am." Eli took the box carefully as if it might shatter. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. William gave me those children. He gave me 12 years of happiness. But you—" Clara's voice caught. "You gave me a future, a second chance. A reason to believe that losing someone doesn't mean losing everything." Sam stepped forward. In his hand was William's knife, the one he'd carried since his father's death, the one he'd guarded like a sacred object. "I want you to have this," he said to Eli. "Papa would have wanted someone who protects this family to carry it. That's you now." Eli looked at Clara, his eyes bright with unshed tears. She nodded. "Thank you, Sam." Eli took the knife, his voice rough. "I'll carry it with honor." Annie came next, pressing a folded paper into Eli's hands. "I wrote you a song. It's not very good, but I'm sure it's perfect." Tommy brought a drawing, the whole family stick figures with oversized heads standing in front of a house with a big red barn. And Lily, not quite understanding what was happening, but wanting to participate, handed Eli a slightly wilted wildflower she'd picked herself. "For you," she said solemnly, "because you're nice." Eli gathered them all close. His wife, his children, his impossible, unexpected family, and Clara felt something settle in her chest. Not the absence of pain, because the pain would always be there, woven into the fabric of who she was. But alongside the pain, something else: joy, belonging, home. "I never thought I'd have this," Eli said quietly. "Never let myself want it. Too scared of losing something this precious." "You won't lose us," Clara said. "You don't know that. I know that we're here now. That today, this moment, we're together. And that's what matters. Not what might happen tomorrow, not what we've lost before. Just this. Just us." The children had wandered toward the blanket drawn by the food and the lanterns and the magic of an evening picnic. Clara and Eli stood together watching them, these 5 small humans who'd somehow become the center of everything. "You know what I realized?" Eli said softly. "What?" "That day in the store, when I saw you about to sell your ring, I thought I was saving you. I thought I was being the hero riding in to rescue the damsel in distress." He shook his head. "But that's not what happened at all." No. You saved yourself. You'd been saving yourself and those children for 2 years before I came along. All I did was give you a chance, and you took it. You fought for it. You built this life with your own hands and your own heart." Eli turned to face her fully. "I didn't save you, Clara. If anything, you saved me." "We saved each other," Clara said. That's what love is, isn't it? Two people pulling each other out of the dark. I think so. I think that's exactly what it is. They joined the children on the blanket, passing food, and trading stories, and watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. When darkness finally fell, they gathered the lanterns and walked home together, Lily asleep in Eli's arms, Tommy's hand in Clara's, the older children running ahead. Later, after everyone was in bed, Clara stood at the window of her room, their room, and looked out at the valley she'd learned to call home. The stars were brilliant overhead. The air was sweet with summer. Somewhere in the barn, a horse whickered softly in its sleep. Eli came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "Choices," Clara said. "All the choices that led us here. What if I hadn't gone to the store that day? What if you hadn't stopped to listen? What if Silas had won so many ways it could have gone differently? But it didn't. We're here. That's what matters." "I know. She leaned back against him. "I spent so long believing I had no choices. That life just happened to me, and all I could do was survive it. But that's not true, is it? We always have choices, even when they seem impossible." "What are you choosing now?" Clara turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd walked into her life and changed everything. "I'm choosing to stop being afraid. I'm choosing to believe this will last. I'm choosing to be happy, even when happiness feels dangerous, even when part of me is still waiting for something to go wrong." She touched his face. "I'm choosing you, Eli Callahan. Today and tomorrow and every day after that." He kissed her, then soft and sweet and full of promise. "And I choose you, Clara Callahan, always." Outside, the wind whispered through the summer grass, carrying the scent of wildflowers and warm earth. The mountains stood sentinel against the starlit sky, and in a farmhouse built of logs and hope, a family slept peacefully together whole. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and chosen and more than enough. Clara May Whitmore. Callahan had lost everything once. Her husband, her security, her faith that the world could be kind. She'd been beaten down by grief and fear, and the cruelty of a man who saw her as property to be owned. But she'd survived. Not just survived, she'd risen. She'd fought for her children and herself. She'd opened her heart to love again, even when love felt like the most dangerous thing in the world. And in the end, she'd found what she'd been searching for all along. Not rescue, not salvation from someone else. Home. A place where she belonged, a family that was hers. A love that asked nothing but gave everything. Clara Callahan closed her eyes and let herself rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, Josie leaving for school, Sam learning to become a man, the younger ones growing and changing in ways she couldn't predict. Life would continue to surprise her, to test her, to demand more than she thought she could give. But she would meet it all, because she was no longer a widow clinging to survival. She was a wife, a mother, a woman who had chosen her own fate and built her own happiness from the ashes of everything she'd lost. And that was worth every struggle, every tear, every moment of fear. That was worth everything.